Minato, the fourth and fastest Hokage, who was once known as the Yellow Flash, has always been in the conversation against Konoha's strongest clan, the Uchiha. Fugaku was a candidate for the fourth Hokage, having fought in the Third Great Ninja War like Minato. Following Minato's death and the Sannin's departure, Shisui is stated by the official birthday columns to have been the Leaf's hope in fulfilling the gap of military loss. Itachi scored the second highest on the written exam behind Minato, and beat Minato's time in the Forest of Death, having gone alone. Minato fought a death match with Obito, who was under the alias of Madara. I mean, you get it, right? So today, I, along with a great friend of mine, who we all love to see on the channel, Sage, are going to give you guys the all-encompassing answer to what if Minato ran the Uchiha Gauntlet. But do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and describe what that actually entails?
Yeah, I don't know why he's saying we're great. I just met this guy.
I don't know what you're talking about. No? Not a clue.
No, it's always good to be on the channel.
Batman and Robin here.
Yeah, we always be cooking, so super excited. But yeah, basically we're going to be running Minato through matchups against some of the most premier Uchiha of all time, and the ones that we're looking at right now are Fugaku, Shisui, Itachi, and Madara. So to start off with Fugaku, I think first of all, Virhtue alluded to it, it's worth noting that they were both up for the position of Hokage, and then the Uchiha clan actually says that the elders kept him from being like a serious candidate. They kept him out of the conversation, which would sort of imply that he was worthy of the position, but that he didn't necessarily get the consideration that he deserved because Danzo and the other elders just didn't like the Uchiha clan, essentially. But does that mean that he and Minato are on the same echelon of power? No, just like it doesn't mean that Orochimaru is on the same echelon of power as Minato. So I think whenever it comes to Fugaku, there are a lot of really interesting things that we can pull from. For example, I think it's almost undeniable that he has the Mangekyo Sharingan. We see a drawing of it in Boruto, the anime, and the Boruto anime is stated to be canon, written by Ukyo Kodachi, who was also writing, or the storyboarding was done by Ukyo Kodachi, who was also writing the Boruto manga for the first 53 chapters. So, in multiple interviews, Ikimoto, who's currently writing it, said that the Boruto anime is also canon. So it's like that right there kind of seals the deal for me, that he probably has the Mangekyo Sharingan, probably how he got the Wicked Eye moniker. And I also think that if he does have the Mangekyo Sharingan, that should allow for him to have some form of Susanoo, as he would have unlocked it in the Third Great Ninja War, which would have been at least a few years prior to, because Kakashi is 14 during the Nine-Tails attack, and the Nine-Tails attack takes place a few years prior to the Uchiha massacre, so he definitely would have had and the Nine-Tails attack takes place after the Third Great Ninja War, obviously. So he would have had the Mangekyo Sharingan for a while, meaning he should have some level of proficiency with it. So it does make him a dangerous opponent. But as to whether or not he compares to Minato, I think that's sort of a little bit more difficult to dig into. Do you want to sort of go over your thoughts on how they would compare to one another and why?
Yeah, so I mean, I think even regarding his MS, you have to use anime material. For example, the Shippuden anime could highlight it being a genjutsu-based set of abilities, as it uses his MS to bypass Itachi's base 3 Tomoe to show him a genjutsu of himself controlling the half Nine-Tails and running it amok as it destroys Konoha. However, I think it should be clear that their third war performances would lean in Minato's favor, with the fourth databook concluding that Minato is praised among all shinobi as the greatest in godlike speed, fitting with how Iwagakure puts a run-on-sight order for all shinobi who see Minato on the battlefield, which is something the birthday columns make plural, implying that maybe other nations like Kumo did a similar thing for their shinobi outside of the Unruly A, which is a title given to the strongest man in Kumo, as stated by the fourth databook, which is why when Minato was able to completely blitz around and humiliate him, which Sage has a short detailing, check it out, you can see why A, much later, after a decade of training and lifting weights, which he does in his free time according to the fourth databook, A still believes that not a finer shinobi has ever lived comparison to Minato. Minato, in just these Jonin days during the war, was also so strong that the birthday columns also state that the Konoha shinobi would rather have him than anyone else in their corner, showing how Minato is definitely stronger even whilst a Jonin, which he grows from. This could be supported by how A is stated to finally boast a godlike speed not inferior to Jonin Minato, but Minato's 4th databook page outright makes him the greatest in godlike speed, and therefore greater than Fugaku. But I've already been talking for a minute, so do you want to cut in here and detail why Shisui would be above him and hence Fugaku isn't the top of Konoha?
Yeah, 100%. And quickly, I also think it's worth noting that Minato is just stated in the chapter 238 synopsis statement to have unrivaled strength, which should apply to not only everybody who was introduced at that time, but also everybody from his era. But Shisui is a little bit after his era, right? So the Shisui is kind of an animal. We actually have been kind of pushing the Shisui is an animal narrative for a minute now, because we, unlike some other content creators, actually understand and have read the novels and get that they're canon. But that being said, yeah, he's an absolute monster. Number one, his Kodomatsu Kami, what he's most known for, is just stated in his Naruto website birthday column to be a peerless genjutsu. This is reflective of Itachi, who wields the Tsukiyomi, calling it the ultimate genjutsu, and it gained him fame worldwide, but that's not the only thing that gained him fame. Also, Shisui the Teleporter, the Shisui of the Body Flicker, he gained his moniker Shisui of the Teleporter, it's the Viz translation of Body Flicker, because of his particular skill at this art. And Yashiro, who's 45 years old and would have been around the Uchiha clan for quite a long time, says that he is the best ever in the history of the Uchiha clan at it. So he's got these two attributes that are like potentially peak of verse in terms of his capabilities. Not only that though, we know that according to Itachi, the Susanoo awoke in his eyes after he awoke his other two Mangekyo abilities, which was almost immediate. The massacre takes place a year-ish after Shisui's death, and he has both of his main abilities, Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi. So I think it's fair to say that Shisui probably had his two MS abilities, probably two different variations of Kodo, within a year of awakening his. We see this with Sasuke as well. He gets his fairly quickly. So if he has those, that means he probably has the Susanoo. And he's around 16-ish when he dies, and he would have awoken his MS when he was around 8 years old. So he potentially had the Susanoo, or not the Susanoo, he potentially had the MS for like 8 years, which means he should have the Susanoo as well. So you pair Susanoo defense, plus world-class body flicker, plus strongest genjutsu ever. Oh, and by the way, he's shown being able to wield a Susanoo weapon, like a lance, in the Naruto Top 99 sketch that Kishimoto put out. The only time that we ever see in canon material somebody use a Susanoo weapon like that whenever they're, wielding the Susanoo is in the skeletal and above. We don't see it in like just the ribcage forms. So I think it's very likely that he had the skeletal Susanoo bare minimum plus these crazy stats, which actually led to him being sort of narratively implied to be somebody who could step into the position that Minato and the Sannin filled, with the birthday column saying, after the 4th Hokage died and then the legendary 3 left, this creates a backdrop against which Shisui may be seen as a rising star capable of supporting the Hidden Leaf in the future. That's kind of a crazy statement, because narratively that implies that he was on track to become somebody that's on that tier in terms of the eyes of the people. So I think that I've kind of laid a good backdrop for where we can scale Shisui from. Do you kind of want to take it from here and discuss this matchup and some other things?
I think there's a bit of another comparison that should also be mentioned, and it's in chapter 223 and in the anime profile guides. It's stated that the Fireball Jutsu defines an Uchiha shinobi. And for this, I would also like to say that the Uchiha crest is stated to be one to symbolize the one who controls fire. And in the Itachi novel, the Uchiha are stated to be a clan with a chakra that has fire attributes, so whatever you interpret that as. And obviously, we also know that during the novels, Itachi actually gets a fireball of a size he's never reached before, and then mentions the fact that the only people who could replicate such a size would be Shisui and Fugaku, implying those two are the top of the clan. But now we have at least the only thing they could possibly be close in is in fire style, but Shisui's fire style also requires multiple water style users to cancel it out in the anime. But yeah, I also think Sage mapped out pretty well why Shisui should naturally just be above Fugaku, and this follows logically as supplementary in something he also kind of highlighted, where it's just dismantling the common misconception of, well, since Fugaku is a candidate for the 4th Hokage, he's rivals with Minato. But this idea just presupposes that Minato isn't above that level, but rather exactly at the threshold of what is required for 4th Hokage, when that's just not the case. Minato, whilst Hokage, defends the village from Kurama and Obito, the 2 most powerful opponents in the world, where he would use his masterful sealing ninjutsu like the Flying Raijin Guiding Thunder to crack space and time itself. Something Shikaku implies it has to be Minato, fitting with how he implies to Hiruzen that he will have to be at Kushina's birth, regardless of her being his wife, due to him likely being the only shinobi capable of monitoring her seal. And I mean, Kushina does imply that he can seal Kurama without the Reaper death, plus whilst a kid, Kushina believes the initial assumption that Minato had learned every Uzumaki sealing ninjutsu could be made, so keep his sealing in mind for his wincons later. But anyway, that just kind of pushes the notion of him being above every other shinobi in the village, something outright stated by the Land of Waves novelization, but whatever. Even if you apply Fugaku's reputation as the Wicked Eye as something impressive or whatever, as Sage mentioned, Shisui is stated by the birthday columns to be feared by shinobi of other nations as Shisui of the Teleporter, and hence to why even Killer Bee, Kumo's perfect Jinchuriki, recognized him and his valor. I mean, I would also say it's more difficult to gain a reputation like this without being in a time of war, but again, it is, is it to the level that Minato was praised at? No. The 1 Decade 100 Ninja guy states that he was feared by shinobi all over the entire world for his speed, something Genma's page also supplements at the bottom by stating that the Yellow Flash of Konoha, the title of the 4th Hokage earned during the 3rd Great Ninja War, which struck fear into other nations. It comes from the 4th's usage of space-time ninjutsu that allows for ultra high-speed combat. Something that supplements a, Virhtue original, if you will, about the FTG not being instantaneous, but rather a high-speed movement across space and time. A speed so fast it's not even comparable to body flicker, something all directly stated by the 2nd databook, hence to why he never calls it teleportation, but rather transportation, and why Tobirama says his clone's FTG is still slow. So the 3rd databook's definition outright also coins the term I use for this argument, where it just states that an object or person essentially moves through a subspace created by cracking space and time itself through the seal. So Minato would obviously be faster than Tobirama completely due to just point A and point B movement, but this also means that although Shisui's body flicker is monstrous and stated by even Uchiha like Yashiro to be the greatest ever, as Sage mentioned, Yashiro being over 40 and experiencing both the 2nd and 3rd war. This is very impressive stuff. But Minato has the FTG, which is a speed far beyond any possible body flicker speed for Shisui. And in terms of empirical evidence, Minato is shown directly on panel intercepting the full Kurama's full speed pulse strike to save Kushina. He also is able to jump across the entire village to blitz and drop Gamabunta onto Kurama. And the feat I found that I think pushes us even further, as you guys know, is Minato being capable of reacting to Kurama's full speed Bijou bombs with no sweat marks or signs of distress, with him even being confident in transporting more of these bombs if needed. But how fast are these bombs? Well, the projectile velocity of these bombs is actually so insane that they destroy the houses around it without any direct contact, something the Susanoo arrow does to the water during the Kaguya Summit. And this is ironic, as during the war arc, the Bijou bomb and Susanoo arrow are actually shown equal with just the half avatar. But what does this mean? Well, the Susanoo arrow is a literal blitz level above Sasuke and his Susanoo, which would mean that the Bijou bomb is a blitz level above Kurama. Stay with me. So how fast is the full Kurama? Well, Kurama is just chakra manifested into a beam, which is Naruto's half KCM2 avatar, as it's also just chakra. And since chakra correlates to speed and power, see where I'm going, this at least guarantees that Kurama is relative to KCM2 Naruto, but that's a lowball. If you notice, when Minato actually splits Kurama's foot shrinks to maybe a third of what it once was. The reason as to why is, why the halves aren't 50-50, well, the Dark Kurama literally states that Minato sealed only the leftover half into Naruto. So yeah, this would all lead to the conclusion that Minato is logically at least a blitz or 2 levels above KCM2 Naruto and just hand-weaving combat and reaction speed, but don't even get me started on Body Flicker and FTG, but do you want to go ahead and just kind of hammer a few other KCM2 metas to show why this is consistent for him to be way faster than Shisui in terms of typical speed, which would also set a benchmark for Minato going forward into the other matches?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite one is Minato blitz tier effectively above Kurama, full power Kurama. Kurama relative to the Wood Style from Hashirama, both the Wood Dragons and the Wood Golem. Wood Golem and Wood Dragons relative to Madara Susanoo. Madara Susanoo above Madara. Madara, when regaining his former strength, not even at full power in the war, or not even at full alive power in the war, is still relative to EMS Sasuke. EMS Sasuke relative to KCM2 Naruto. I mean, that it's a pretty good one. It puts, Minato a couple tiers above KCM2 Naruto, at least while using his body flicker. And, with that type of, I guess, benchmark for feats, it'd be really hard to ever demonstrate why Shisui should be on that level, especially because the only statements getting him to this impressive level with the body flicker are ones that just call him Shisui of the body flicker, and then one from Yashiro where he said that he is the best in the Uchiha clan at the body flicker. So it's like, okay, so he's been around for 45 years. So everyone he's seen is worse than Shisui at body flicker in the Uchiha clan, but he specifically says in the Uchiha clan. So it's like, that doesn't really necessarily apply to Minato. So I do think that at worst, you could say that they're comparable, but what does it mean to be the best in the Uchiha clan from that time at the body flicker? I mean, better than child Itachi at the body flicker, better than Fugaku. I will say Fugaku is stated to be particularly talented even amongst the Uchiha, so he was super strong, but he's below Minato, so I don't think that we have enough to go off of to get him quite to that level. So yeah, I definitely lean Minato here. And I think one other important thing to note is even if he gets caught in the Kodo Matsukami, the problem is that, number one, he can counter it potentially with his FTG, because Shisui just kind of makes people operate in a way that's however they want. He replaces their thoughts with thoughts that he wants them to have. So it doesn't necessarily negate him from using body flicker as he normally, or not body flicker, from using FTG as he normally would. And if he teleports outside of space, that's an infinite distance, and then comes back, he breaks the distance barrier at which Genjutsu is effective. But I don't even think he'd be caught in it, because of the fact that, number one, Minato just has better speed assertions, and number two, Shisui doesn't even use Kodo on Mukai Kohinata until he's literally getting his throat ripped out. So you'd have to assume that something similar happens in this fight, where Minato is in the process of killing Shisui but not actually doing it, and I don't see that happening. So I lean Minato here, even though Shisui is super impressive, and I do think that if he continued to live on, he could have reached that same kind of tier of combatant, as the narrative sort of suggests.
Yeah. Now, before closing off Shisui, I would like to take a second to address the most edgy method taken for when people try to say Shisui would win here. And I know, me and Sage, we are higher interpreters, I guess, for Shisui, but we don't really subscribe to this, and we'll detail that. So, they'll firstly try to make the argument of how Shisui has a faster body flicker based off Yashiro's statement, which we've addressed. And then they'll couple it with this argument. So essentially, Itachi during the massacre is a mental mess. I mean, he's killing his family, but it's actually a very depressing sequence to read through. But in this, he questions, what if Shisui were still around? Would he allow Itachi to do this, or would he stop him? The novel puts it like this. Itachi wondered what on earth Shisui would have said if he had been alive and there. Obliterating the clan? Would Shisui have forgiven him? Probably not. Shisui would have tried to protect the clan in the end, in which case they would have ended up enemies. Maybe it was fortunate that they parted that day as friends. End quote. So, for the Shisui side, they basically say that, well, Shisui would beat this massacre Itachi, who would be certainly stronger due to hatred than the form who just prior Obito acknowledged as a valid opponent after Itachi sliced through his aura, which is a power-correlated idea throughout the novels. However, I think it's important that while this could be the case, Itachi makes no implication that Shisui would be able to stop him, but rather that he would try, and they would be on opposite sides. That's all. The scene is also more played out to be a tragic scene for Itachi's character, not really some power scaling. I think it's kind of a situation where Minato should still be way faster than him, and due to his ability to just blitz characters off start, I think it's quite noteworthy to say that he will probably just be blitzing around Shisui, who at best, if you want to say he perception blitzes Danzo with a right hand tiger sign, which is a perception of his left eye that doesn't change much to the Kage Summit, meaning that Shisui's couple blitz levels above peak Kage Summit Sasuke, then that's fine. But again, this is a KCM2 at Minato, not a Kage Summit Sasuke, who is rivals and say to be equals with Sage Naruto. So there are some big gaps in between here for their stat disparity. I think the Rasengan is something that Minato should be able to use in terms of just maybe crushing parts of the Susanoo, as it has no durability from what we know or what we could prove. So Minato's Rasengan that completely demolishes Obito, things like this, I think that's a very valid point to bring up. And if not, he could just outlast him. As during the third war, I know you've brought this up and brought it to my attention that Minato probably uses FTG like 70 times on one battlefield. So I mean, like, you guys see where we're going. Like, even though Shisui has a better match than people give him credit, which I hope we've laid out well, it's not something that he can certainly win, if anything. So I would definitely say Minato's winning this match like 7 out of 10 times. And the one before that with Fugaku, I say Minato wins it maybe 9 out of 10 times. What do you think for those two?
Yeah, I think you're totally correct. I think it's fairly clear that Minato is at a higher level. The unrivaled strength statement at the chapter synopsis statement in 238 at the end of part 1 should just apply to everybody from part 1 and before that we know of. And once we get introduced to, or at least everybody who was around during his time, right? And so the fact that Shisui does kind of like grow up and get more powerful after Minato dies does kind of like help his stocks, but we just don't have anything definitive to sort of point to. And then I do think that the Naruto website birthday column statement that says that, Minato dying and the Sannin leaving creates a backdrop against which Shisui may be seen as a rising star capable of supporting the Hidden Leaf in the future implies that he was on track to get to that place, but not quite there. So yeah, I do think he's way stronger than a lot of people think. A lot of people are like, "Oh, he's river level." It's so stupid.
We'll have more videos on this, by the way. We'll talk about
yeah, for sure. But at the end of the day, he just didn't live long enough to get to that level. So yeah, I do have Minato winning both of these. And I think the next one is one that's hotly debated. But I'm not gonna lie to you. Let me sip my coffee real quick. I don't think it's that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you, and I'm also an Itachi guy. Like, I'm an Itachi guy, so we move on to Itachi. This is a peak, healthy Itachi. Now, again, I'm an Itachi guy, right? I really like Itachi, and I generally do give him his higher interpretations. For example, I think a live Itachi, at some point, is Edo Itachi. I think that's very clear with the replicative aspect of the Edo Tensei. For example, it always brings a character back to when they were alive. For example, old Hiruzen's brought back with the wrinkles, the exact same amount of wrinkles I would like to add on his face, and the dead pigment cells for his hair, things like this. Nagato's brought back literally in a state that he couldn't walk, which is a point to be brought up because people like to say that Kabuto enhanced Itachi's body. Why would Kabuto enhance Itachi's body when he could enhance Nagato, who he believes has the higher dojutsu evolution, and he can't even walk? But he's going to up Itachi's? Oh, and he doesn't even know about Itachi's arsenal. He thinks Itachi has the sensing ability. Itachi's like, no, dude, that was Nagato who had that one. I don't have that. Like, this is the thing. So it just doesn't make sense. So I'm always been of the interpretation that Itachi still has blood here. So he's still at least relative to maybe a part 1 Itachi in terms of these stats. So this means that he could probably parry off a KCM1 Naruto, although you can make arguments for KCM1 not going all out. But I think him being massively above B, this war arc B, should be noted. For example, he's able to completely dodge his behind the back surprise attack and do a backflip like 3 times before B even continues the attack, and he's able to dodge over 10 different strikes when in his 8 sword style. So there's a lot of things here. He uses the Phoenix Flower Jutsu, which even damages him, and Naruto sees the MS come out, and he's like, dude, if either of us get hit by the Amaterasu or the Tsukiyomi, we're done. He's literally screaming at this idea. So Itachi, even in these, KCM1 levels, I think it's consistent. Whilst fighting alongside his brother, who just obtained the EMS, they are quite relative, with Itachi being able to use his Edo body as a bit of an advantage, and this is very consistent. For example, Itachi, whilst alive, is stated to be surpassed by EMS Sasuke. In the summit, Itachi has to be above that Sasuke, as there's numerous comparisons of Itachi being, greatly superiors. For example, their Genjutsu comparisons. Itachi's is greater by a night and day difference. So you guys can see the points here of Itachi being massively above. So him being this Edo level isn't, absurd. But that's the thing. Edo level, KCM 1 level versus Minato, who is KCM 2 level. So regardless of what you think about Itachi, Minato is still outstanding him by quite a degree. That's what's important here. So then you get to points about his Susanoo, his abilities with his Susanoo, like Totsuka Blade and Yadamir, something that can deflect all attacks by matching the oncoming attributes to alter its own, to then nullify it, and then he can pierce him with the Totsuka Blade, maybe something that could plunge him into a world of drunken dreams. But what do you think about the MS abilities? Do you think they could actually bring down Minato? What do you think? Give your thoughts on those.
So, I hate to keep going back to this statement, but Chapter 238, synopsis statement, unrivaled strength. We knew about Itachi at that point in time. If we assume that this is the healthiest
potentially
version
a healthy
of
Itachi, yeah, I was gonna say,
right.
Potentially
if we assume this is the healthiest version of Itachi that we see in the series, and we assume, that this, so like stat wise, that this is the one that's relative to Edo Itachi, right? That would mean that this version of Itachi is below Minato to the point of not even being able to rival him, right? Like, rivaling somebody doesn't necessarily mean that you're equals, it means that you're close. So if he's unrivaled, it means nobody's close to him, which kind of just tracks, right? So now, like Virhtue said, even with a generous interpretation of Itachi, you can get him to like MKCM, like KCM 1.5 level, maybe. Minato
that's even
casually,
a bit wank, you know what I mean? That's
right.
like a bit wank, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Minato is casually a KCM 2 rival. So I think with that alone, it's just like, it kind of spells disaster for Itachi. But then you go into, okay, well, even if he's getting outstatted, maybe he can react to what's happening and like utilize his Susanoo abilities. Maybe. He might be able to erect his Susanoo before he can get his face vaporized with a Rasengan. Maybe. But that Susanoo also should fall prey to the four-pronged seal, which is stated to be able to seal away both large bodies of chakra and large objects. So it's like, regardless of if you want to kind of Discord debate rat around the idea of the Susanoo being a chakra avatar, which it clearly is, it's a large object, so the four-pronged seal should be able to seal it away. So that's
as a matter
eliminated.
of fact, Itachi's Susanoo is stated to be a chakra in his databook page that people cite. So even if you don't think the spirit weapons are, a chakra, you think they are massless and stuff like that, which I subscribe to, they're attached to something that is, mass. It does contain mass. It's chakra. Minato, whenever he takes on the Nine-Tails chakra, he notes it's heavy. So there's obviously mass to it. So yeah, I think you laid that out well. I also think it's important to note that, yes, this is something most people don't know, but I brought it before. Itachi can go autonomous from his Susanoo. For example, in chapter 552, I believe, at the end of the Nagato fight, Itachi leaves his Susanoo and just walks around and talks to B, while the Susanoo continues to seal Nagato and even changes the angularity of the gourd. This is true, but that's kind of just the nature. Most people think, Itachi could just leave a Susanoo. The Minato just teleported the Susanoo, Itachi is still there. Okay, that's great, but that leaves Itachi naked. He doesn't have the Susanoo to protect him, so either way, it's a BFR, or he just gets his armor stripped off. So it's still a Minato favoring idea, regardless of which side you think is. What do you think is going to happen there? What does Itachi choose to do? So yeah, I agree. I think Itachi's Yadamir offers a lot, but the thing is, I think Minato does have some ways around it. I think he's generally a higher fighter in terms of just overall combat. But do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that the Yadamir might be sealable. And if you do seal the Susanoo, do we even know if he can use the Yadamir or Totsuka Blade if he doesn't have access to his
that's
Susanoo.
what I was saying. I don't think he can. You know what I mean?
I don't think so either, because they seem to be implied to be weapons that like kind of come with it, you know. So I think now if you assume that he can use them without the Susanoo, I don't understand why he would use the Susanoo while he has the Yata mirror active. It kind of is self-defeating. Anyway, there's a bunch of things here that, you know, people try to push in Itachi's favor, but at the end of the day, he probably just gets blitzed and gets his head cut off. And if that doesn't happen, the Susanoo comes up at the last second and it gets teleported away or sealed away, and then he gets his head cut off. This is like, there's not really anything he can do. Like, as much as I like Itachi, it's just not. This isn't a close fight in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though we touched on Shisui for longer, I think Itachi does marginally better than Shisui. I think he does. I think Itachi's a lot stronger than Shisui, but the problem is how much simpler the links are. Now you guys can go back and look at the Shisui and say, okay, this is why they drew that conclusion so hardcore, because, you know, Minato is much, much, much faster than these characters. So it's like, I think he would beat Itachi here, like, 7 out of 10 times is what I'd give him, 8 out of 10 times, something like that. But, I guess we can go ahead and move on to EMS Madara. And EMS Madara is somebody very close to Hashirama. If you use the Ford data book, the two are stated to be so close to equals, the difference between them is paper thin. And where does this come from? Well, it comes from probably the idea that since that picture displayed is their taijutsu clash, what this could be in reference is that Madara is actually equal to Hashirama, or potentially even greater and more close to a sage Hashirama in taijutsu, while that Hashirama is vastly above EMS Madara in terms of large-scale ninjutsu and things like that. So maybe that's how they're so close. But what does this mean? Well, unfortunately, Minato does blitz Hashirama to the battlefield, which means in terms of body flicker, he's at least faster. And usually you can draw the conclusion that Hashirama has no durability, so then Minato just blitzes and one-shots him. But is this the same for Madara? Well, maybe. We've offered up counters for, Minato getting around the Susanoo, but I think it's important to also bring up Madara's durability. However, again, Minato can also just amplify his kunai to go past that durability no matter what. So does the Susanoo protect him? Do you think he has techniques that could get around Minato's speed and mitigate it? What do you think? Go ahead and give some thoughts here.
Yeah, so in an overall sense, I am of the opinion that like alive Madara and Hashirama at their peaks are above Minato. In an overall sense, a part of this is because Orochimaru, upon seeing Sasuke with the Senjutsu amp and the Kurama amp in the Susanoo going somewhat relative to Bijou Sage Mode Naruto, is like has the potential to one day surpass Madara, right? We also get statements about how nobody in the modern era even compares to them. Like nobody, Dan even says like the only person who could ever hope to stop him is to stop Madara is Hashirama. Like there's so many just different lore statements that kind of get these two above everybody else in the series up until Naruto and Sasuke get sort of their six paths abilities. But Minato isn't just like a power goblin. Minato is also somebody who has an enormous amount of hacks that helps him out here. So what this comes down to for me is whether or not Minato can blitz him and get his hacks abilities off before Madara can just kind of overwhelm him with his abilities. Because the whenever you look at, for example, Hashirama getting blitzed by Unstable Jubito, immediately after this, he outspeeds Unstable Jubito with his wood style. So his wood style, consistently, just like Madara's Susanoo, consistently, those are above their own normal speeds. So I think that that's going to be something that is really difficult to combat, especially because, like, if he like teleports or seals or does something like that, it's going to be a lot harder to seal away one of Madara's abilities as opposed to like one of Itachi's, Shisui's, or Fugaku's, as Madara is massively more powerful than them. So I think it'll be a little bit tougher, but it's like, okay, if he seals it away or if he teleports it away, can Madara just spawn it again? He's also got all these other abilities that like these these other dudes just don't compete. Like, Itachi is nowhere near Madara. Madara is also able to, like, kind of use a pseudo body flicker with hand signs that allows for him to, like, horribly blitz EMS Sasuke, War Arc Sage and Naruto, and Sai back to back to back. So he does have a lot going for him here. The question, like I said, comes down to, do I think Minato is able to blitz him off rip and get one of his hacks abilities off? Maybe. Honestly, I lean Madara in this discussion because I lean Hashirama over Minato, but it is so close because Minato does just have these like crazy hacks, like end fight instantly techniques. I just think that it's far more likely that Madara is able to erect his Susanoo with his reaction speeds, even if Minato is faster than him, and then utilize that to his advantage, like giant AoE style stuff, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. The Virhtue and I haven't talked about this beforehand, so I don't know if Virhtue and I are on the same page here, but I would lean Madara in this one because of just the overwhelming power difference.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I mean, I know Minato's winning this one 9 to 10 out of 10 times. You know, probably like Fugaku level. I'm kidding.
Oh, no.
I completely agree with Sage. I like his line of thought, and I actually think Minato versus Hashirama, I think Minato wins, but I actually think Madara gives him a weirdly better fight. And it's only stylistically, because I actually think Hashirama is above Madara, really no matter what. But Here's the thing. It comes down to what Sage mentioned. Does Minato blitz off start? Yes, he does it. It's his first opening move against Obito. It's his opening move against the Iwa Nen. It's implied by Killer B to be the first thing he does when he bats quite a smash, just like the Yellow Flash, whatever. That's another strategy he uses. It's also where he'll try to go to a battlefield full of kunai, if one is available or if he opens that off start. So it kind of matters which way you take. And in that case, I do think Minato has a good advantage because he's just a character who blitzes off start, if that makes sense. And we know he's able to blitz Hashirama to the battlefield, but to such a degree where he's also able to even outspeed his own flying rising timer. So he's able to actually teleport the bomb and arrive before the bomb relocates into the subspace. This is a very interesting idea of how fast Minato could be. So I actually think he is fast enough to blitz Madara off start. But again, it's just if he does it, if he pulls that off. And again, that's why for this match, I lean closer to a 5 out of 5 instead of a 6 out of 10 for Minato, like I would with maybe a Hashirama matchup, for example, because Madara does have the Susanoo and techniques like that. If we do give Madara, though, Kurama, I think Minato has a bit too much pressure to worry about, and in that case, I lean Madara, 7, 8 out of 10 times, maybe 7, but I think if he doesn't have Kurama, I think it's a 5 out of 5 is what I would lean to. So no, I'm not in much disagreement with you there. My whole thought process is like if Minato is able to blitz him not only physically but also in his like raising of the Susanoo off rip, then the fight's over. But if Madara is able to like react to his movement speed enough to be able to erect the Susanoo and protect himself from that initial attack, then I think Madara wins. So it really comes down to how you think the fight starts, and I think either of them is fine. I agree. I think it's probably like 5 to 6 out of 10 times for Madara, but like it's close. It genuinely comes down to like how does this fight start? Because if he sees Minato's speed like that, there's no shot he's engaging in like a close quarters combat afterwards. It's just not happening. He's gonna be like, all right, we're staying in this Susanoo, we're firing giant AoE style attacks, and this is where we're staying. But it's a good one. It's a much better one than a lot of people think. Like Minato's correct. I'm with you. And I think this would be true, but like I said, Minato, he's praised among all ninjas the greatest in godlike speed, which means Madara, whenever he's in the cave, is talking to Zetsu about how fast Minato is and why he's faster than himself. So anyway, let's go ahead and conclude the video.
He actually does. He actually does know who Minato is too. We know
that's
that
true.
because he
That's
talks
true.
about it. Yeah,
That's true. I've heard that argument, but as a Minato guy, let's not do that. Shout out Marv. But anyway, listen, that's the video. If you guys did enjoy, then please go check out Sage. If you guys were curious why we didn't include Sasuke on this list, well, Sasuke is obviously our main deuteragonist of the series. So if you want to see a lot more about him and a form by form analysis, go to Sage's channel. That's over there. So yeah, we covered that, and we have other videos. If you want more Shisui content, me and him have a collab on my channel detailing Shisui versus the Okatsuki, things like this. So yeah, there's a lot more content for you guys to go over there and enjoy. But yeah, go subscribe to him, subscribe to me, and more importantly than all of that, God bless you all. Love you guys.